Welcome everyone to a new episode of my comprehensive NFL player review series, Studs and Duds. If this is your first time catching Studs and Duds, this is actually my longest standing series, going back to when this channel first began as a Madden channel, where I use my ratings changes for my own custom Madden roster to discuss the rising and falling players around the NFL. And to this day, this system hasn't changed for me, as it's a great way to hit on how all of these players are performing on the field, for better or worse. So please, sit down, buckle up, and enjoy, as we've got a lot of players to talk about here today. Welcome in, everybody, to the AFC South episode of Studs and Duds. This has turned into a pretty fun division here, with the Colts and Jags especially being a little better than we expected this year. So excited to talk about them and this entire division here. So if you could, please do hit that like button as we get started. I really appreciate it. And let's get into it. So we're going to start with the Indianapolis Colts, and for their Midseason Super Stud Award winner, we're going with Jonathan Taylor. It was going to be a tough choice between them and Daniel Jones, but with Jonathan Taylor in the Offensive Player of the Year, hell, in the MVP race this season, he deserves, I think, to be the highlight signature player for the Colts here today. Getting a +7 in my ratings, up to a 94. He leads all running backs in yards by almost 200 yards. He leads all running backs in yards per attempt by 5. He leads the NFL in touchdowns this year. He also leads the league in yards after contact. He's second behind just Bijan Robinson in missed tackles forced, which, considering that's like Bijan's bit, it's crazy that he's only one behind Bijan. So Bijan's at 49, Jonathan Taylor's at 48, and then James Cook is behind them at 40, and then you go down to 36th is Jahmyr Gibbs. So that's how dominant JT has been, really in any way you want to slice the running back position. And I've really enjoyed this too, because JT is one of my favorite players to watch in the league. It's been hard to see the last 3 years, honestly. Granted, at the beginning of last year, it looked like this guy was still in there before he cooled off again. But really 2022, 2023, following up that 2021 season where he was the best running back in the league, he just hasn't been the same guy. Watching the tape, you just don't see all of the missed tackles we talked about, the crazy explosiveness after contact, and these big long runs. He just doesn't get caught from behind. It's so good to see that he is back. So we're starting the Colts off with our love for Jonathan Taylor, but let's continue going through this offense. Daniel Jones also getting a +7, up to a 77 rating at the QB spot there. And I'll be honest, this would have been even more had we done this after week 8. However, he does have 9 turnover-worthy plays in just the last 2 weeks. That's really high and gives me a little bit of pause on this Daniel Jones reemergence here, especially because a lot of it has come kind of when he is under pressure, a lot of fumbles, some bad throws under pressure. So it's obviously something to keep an eye on there, but he still deserves a ton of love for what he's accomplished this year. Rebounding here on the Indianapolis Colts, and not just rebounding. I think he played pretty well in 2022, but this is, showing us a new version of Daniel Jones that we haven't seen before. Despite what I said about some of the mistakes under pressure, I do think he's made more plays under pressure than we've probably ever seen from Daniel Jones. Navigating the rush, even stepping up in the face of pressure, delivering some really impressive throws, scrambling as well. Under pressure, but also he's been hitting the deep ball more than we've seen from Daniel Jones. That's always been something that it feels like, at least if you look at a Daniel Jones passing map, it's always felt very Alex Smithian, and he has typically been towards the bottom of NFL starters in average depth of target. This year he's at 8.9 yards. It's a career high and about 1.5 yards more than his career average. That places him 13th in the NFL for average depth of target for QBs. So we've seen him really pushing the ball downfield and showing a little bit more arm talent than we've gotten accustomed to with Daniel Jones. So even if there are some turnovers starting to creep up with him, I still think there's a ton to praise with him. There's plenty of reason to say that he's probably going to get a contract extension unless he really falls off. I don't want to put the cart too far before the horse here, but it does feel like as long as he can get relatively back on track, we're talking about Daniel Jones as at least a bridge starting quarterback for the Colts here, if not more of a franchise quarterback, if he can completely eliminate these pretty ugly mistakes these last couple of weeks and get back on track from what we saw at the start of the season. But he is getting some more help, not just Jonathan Taylor. So with the pass catchers, Alec Pierce, he's been awesome this year. Maybe even emerging as, it's hard to say this team's number one wide receiver because the offense is constructed in such a way where they do distribute the ball so evenly and they kind of have, everybody has a specific role within this offense. But for a while it was, okay, Alec Pierce is the deep threat here. And he is. His average depth of target is 20.4 yards. He is maybe the best designated deep threat in the league if that was the only lens you wanted to look at Alec Pierce in, if that makes sense. Comparing him to guys like Rashid Shaheed or Christian Watson and the likes like that. But the thing with Alec Pierce is, yes, he's doing that, but he's also running digs and catching tough balls over the middle of the field, showing off some good route running to separate in the intermediate game especially, and really has been, in many ways, the closest thing to a quote-unquote number one wide receiver that they have here, because Michael Pittman is a very good player, but a little bit more limited in terms of role and route tree and that kind of stuff. And it's not that Alec Pierce runs a million routes, but he does run them all over the field. So he gets a +4 here, and he is going to get a major payday because you just don't find a lot of 6'3", 210+ pound wide receivers that have legit 4.3 speed, that are incredible deep threats, that come down with 50% of your contested catches, that also run block their ass off. He's just an incredibly valuable player for this Colts offense. So much so that I have on my radar to make a video titled The Best Players in the NFL That Nobody Talks About, and I think Alec Pierce might be the featured player in that video. He was kind of the reason I came up with that idea in the first place. So love here, +4 for Alec Pierce, up to a 79. And then the rookie, Tyler Warren, yet another super stud candidate here. It was really hard to pick for the Colts, but he gets a +8 for the rookie, up to an 82. I love it that the Colts seemingly just watched how Tyler Warren was used at Penn State and were like, yeah, let's just do that and assume he can do that at the NFL level, and that all of these different little ways we can use him are going to translate to the NFL, and he can make an impact that way. And it's exactly what's happened. Like, he does normal tight end stuff, of course. He's been really good running like corner routes, especially. He's been an impact over the middle of the field. He's been pretty good as a run blocker as well, especially when they run screens. I mean, he will take you out of the play to the sideline. But, running him as that little check and release option on play action boots. They've lined him up as a fullback and shot him up the middle of the defense from that alignment. They've put him in and just given him the ball as a ball carrier. They've done all of it, and it's been incredible. He's every bit an Offensive Rookie of the Year candidate, has been a slam dunk pick for the Colts, and he is integral to really, all these pieces fit so well together. I think Tyler Warren is maybe the most important cog in terms of just the schematic wrinkles that they're able to bring to the table. But the other tight end as well, Mo Alley-Cox, the veteran, he's blocking his ass off, so he's going to get some love for that, just a +1 for Mo Alley-Cox. He's a big dude. The former basketball player definitely has some toughness. One of the more just physically minded tight ends in the league, doesn't really catch a lot of passes, but the dude is totally happy out there just blocking. Not exactly what you think of with a basketball player converting to play tight end in the NFL, so respect that. And then speaking of blocking, we got 3 offensive linemen going up for the Colts. This O-line has been, again, really core, essential for what they're accomplishing this year as really a historic offense. All of this stuff really clicks together, but it wouldn't happen without the offensive line, at least to this degree. Starting with Quentin Nelson, he gets a +3 up to a 90. And really, he's playing at that all-pro level that we got accustomed to in the first 3 years of Quentin Nelson's career. But, dude, it just is what it is. But for the last 4 years, Quentin Nelson's been a great player, but he has not been that Hall of Fame caliber guy that it felt like after 3 years of his career, we just penciled him in for the Hall of Fame as this untouchable product on the field. And he's been more of just a really good player for a long time now, but he has managed now on his age 29 season to get back to being that signature elite run blocker where he is paving the way down the field. He's making those highlight blocks that you can throw on a TikTok video, load up a highlight reel on Quentin Nelson. That was early career Quentin Nelson. It hasn't been that guy necessarily for a while. He still actually isn't like foolproof as a pass blocker. He especially in the first month of the year, he actually was giving up his fair share of pressures, has settled back in as of late. I really think of the run blocking with him. A great year and some love deserved for Big Q. Then Tanner Bortolini, +6 at the center position. Again, many other teams, this would be a pretty easy choice for a super stud candidate to have a young center emerging as such a quality player as he has, but he's getting drowned out amidst all of these other guys having such great years. But year 2 for Tanner Bortolini has been a ton of fun. They are weaponizing him as a run blocker, his athleticism, and his incredible targeting system and the tenacity he brings as a run blocker. All of it is paired together to give you really one of the better overall centers in the league this year. He next to Quentin Nelson there, and the young Matt Goncalves next to him. You've been able to rush the passer up the middle on these Colts. It's far from perfect, but Bortolini has settled in and been pretty good as a year 2 pass protector, but he's been damn near elite as a run blocker. So it's a +6 for him as he really settles in already at the young stage of his career as a quality starting center with room to become even more than that if we keep seeing him play like this. And then at right guard, Matt Goncalves, they've hit green lights with him as well. I mean, this was a big question for the Colts coming into the year, was with Ryan Kelly and Will Fries leaving, how were the young Bortolini and Goncalves, both out of that 2024 draft class, going to fare? And Goncalves has certainly looked the part there at guard, someone that had sniffed around with a little bit of guard, but was mostly a tackle before this year. And he's been a tough guy to move as a pass blocker. He's 6'6", 330 pounds. He does give you a little bit of beef there next to Tanner Bortolini, who is a much smaller center. So that's definitely been effective, and he's been able to create some drive and move people in the run game as well. He's been I don't want to say a pleasant surprise, because I think if you followed the Colts pretty closely, you felt pretty confident that this was possible, but that doesn't always happen as we see around the league. So it's always good to see a young guard, especially for a third-round pick, to be such a hit. And the Colts' ability to develop these offensive linemen and keep this group ahead of the curve has been really impressive. But that's what we have for the offense. Let's go to the defensive side of things. So Latu continues to take strides here in year 2. Seeing him rush with a good bit more power than he did in his first season, that was something I certainly discussed with Zach Hicks, our guest for the Colts Deep Dive, was like, okay, you got a cross chop. That's great. You can't just win with that. And it does look like he hasn't been as dependent on that cross chop this year as he was last year. It's still in there, but he's mixing in a bull rush and some more inside counters. And I think that is a clear reason we've seen a better pressure rate this year. He's already surpassed his sack total from last year, and he's been awesome as a run defender as well. I think just his overall power profile has taken a tick up. I still don't think it's like totally his game. Like, this isn't, it's unfair to compare anybody to Jared Verse, but I guess I'm trying to find the best way to say this without it coming off as a backhanded compliment to Latu, because I really like the finesse style of his game. You look at what I'm trying to say is you look at his listed weight, 6'5", 265 pounds. Typically, that's more of a power profile. Latu, like, his best trait is his ability to move and how good he is with his hands at that size. But he hasn't always, at least last year, played with more of a strength element to his game. We're seeing that complement the other part of his game, and now he's trending up much more towards looking like a legitimate number 1 edge rusher here for the Colts. So it's a +2 for him. Hopefully he can continue to build and establish himself as that true number 1 guy. But then Ade Tamiwa Adebawore, the fun, ultra-athletic, kind of hybrid defensive tackle. He's been getting after the quarterback this year. He's got 14 pressures this year, impacting the quarterback. There's still a lot to be desired with him. They're basically focusing on him as just an interior player this year after he played around a little bit with the hybrid role last year, just limiting what they're asking of him a little bit, mostly just pass rush downs, using that athleticism, getting off the ball, and he's won some reps as a pass rusher. It's certainly more than he's shown to this point in his career. They've been able to catch him in the run a few times, and that hasn't necessarily been pretty for him, but he deserves some love, and he's heading back in the right direction after being a young prospect that I was really excited about. He's essentially been a non-factor for the first 2 years of his career, but they're getting a little something out of him this year. So again, a +2 up to a 68. Then Jermaine Pratt, the linebacker who they picked up, reunited with Lou Anarumo. He's been comfortable here. I wouldn't say he's been perfect, but tackling and communicating well, probably much better than he did when he was in Cincinnati. Frankly, probably a little frustrating for Bengals fans to see that, but he definitely deserved just a little bit of love settling back down with Lou here. And then you go to the secondary. So Chris Lamons has had to step in as a slot cornerback for them with Kenny Moore missing a few games. And he's struggled to tackle, but he has really held up in coverage with multiple impressive plays on the ball, kind of standing out in that regard. So a no-name veteran there, Chris Lamons, is like 30 years old, came into the league in 2018, and before this year, he had only played 400 career snaps. So really a no-name player, but has at least put himself relatively on the map, probably as a backup slot corner here for the Colts. So it's a +3 for him up to a 67. Next on the list, Mekhi Blackmon really has not been steady from him. He's been penalized 6 times. There's been a few games against the Rams and the Cardinals especially where you can tell he's backup. You can even see some of the flashes of why Minnesota probably was not too afraid to move on from him, but there's been a couple interceptions, a couple plays on the ball. He's now been starting almost the entire season. Again, I don't think he's a starting caliber guy. I think he is probably more of that like nice backup to have that maybe can have a good game for you. I think that's more of what we've seen, but he's going to get a +1 for that here. And then another cornerback here, Cameron Mitchell, again, definitely has not been perfect. We're only talking about a +1 up to a 68 rating here, so still very much looking like a backup, week-to-week type of corner. But the Browns released him after the first couple of weeks because he had really struggled. And then he's come to Indianapolis. He had a couple of games there against the Chargers and the Titans where he had to get starting playing time, and he held up all right. Targeted 5 times, allowing 3 receptions, and just 21 yards in those 2 starts combined. So just a little bit of love there for the young Cam Mitchell, who's still just 24 years old despite being in his 3rd year. Was a interesting kind of day 3 prospect coming out of Northwestern, picked by the Browns. There's some upside there. You know, he still has a long way to go, but someone to keep an eye on. And then you go to the safety room. I've been really impressed by Cam Bynum this year, if not for what he's done on the Colts, which has been making an impact. He's already got 5 passes defended. He's only missed 3 tackles this year. He's just playing at a really high level, maybe even like a Pro Bowl level, depending if you'd have to really dive into other safeties in the AFC. But he's impressed me with what he's done with the Colts. But maybe what's even bigger is you see the Vikings and how much they really miss him. I think the communication on the back end, he's just such a key part of a lot of the stuff that we just don't necessarily see on the broadcast and on the film. I think he just makes a bigger impact than even just the plays he makes. He's been everything they could have asked for after they gave him a ton of money this offseason, but I think it was worth it. You make that contract. You sign him to that contract every day of the week with the impact he's made on this defense. So he's up to an 80 now. And then the other safety here, Rodney Thomas, he's getting in for rotational snaps, dime back type of looks, that kind of deal. But he's rallied and had some really impressive tackles without missing any tackles. Really hasn't given too much up in coverage either. He's been a starter for this team at times. Eventually lost that job, but that was 2 years ago, so he seems to have settled down a little bit. He really got benched for a ton of missed tackles, especially in 2023, so it's good to see that side of his game getting cleaned up here a couple years later. Probably not talking about a starter here, but every team could use a nice dime back to plug in sure pass situations. So that's what we have for the Indianapolis Colts. Kind of a unique team compared to other ones for studs and duds. Not a ton of players, still a lot, But the ones that we did have feel like, especially in the offensive side of the ball, were like massive boosts. So they've got a lot going on this year, of course. But let's talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars, who do have a major list of players. With all the shakeup this offseason, a new regime, that was probably to be expected. But let's take a deep breath as we head into this one. I think we got like 25 players here for the Jags. But for their super stud, going to go with Travis Etienne. And it's a +4 for Etienne, up to an 83 after really a couple of down years for Etienne. He's starting to feel closer to that dynamic running back that we saw earlier in his career, and he's trying to get paid here, and I respect the hell out of it. But he's really been the engine of the Jags offense. The explosive plays especially have been so big for this team that has been hunting for explosive plays, desperate for explosive plays. Especially earlier in the year, he had runs of 71 yards, 30 yards, 48 yards, showing off that long speed that he's been known for going back to his days at Clemson. But I think the vision for Etienne has been certainly better than it has been the last couple of years. There's still the occasional run where he really does like to bounce things outside and take advantage of that speed. It's hard to blame him for that. But it had become an issue for him over the last couple of years. But this year, this run game has been really predicated around getting to the perimeter, which naturally, if you have a home run hitting mentality as a running back, it's great to be in those runs where if you just make the right read, you are out in space and you're already designed to get to the outside. So I think that's played a hand, but he does just look better to me. The missed tackle forced rate is up. The yards after contact is up. And even when they do run inside, it feels like he's had some very savvy runs when they've needed it to get some tough yardage that wasn't necessarily blocked up. So it's been a big year for Etienne. Excited to see what that payday looks like for him. But let's continue going through this offense. So Trevor Lawrence, I am going to lower him by 2. He's into the 70s now. It's not a great sight for Trevor Lawrence. Despite the Jags having some team success here, I don't really think too much of it you can really credit to Trevor. I mean, it's been incredibly inconsistent, despite all the talk about him reworking his mechanics and becoming more accurate. It has continued to just be a major issue for him, whether he's sailing a ball, leaving it in the dirt, or just making a lot of these catches harder than they need to be for these wide receivers. It's just incredibly frustrating given that he has the arm talent he has, and he just can't really figure out the accuracy side of things. And there's been some frustrating decisions. There's a lot of miscommunications here, which aren't all on Trevor Lawrence, but given the volume of miscommunications, some of them inevitably have to be to some degree on Trevor Lawrence. So there's just been a lot of issues with him. He needs to come down. He's not a horrible quarterback, but he is incredibly inconsistent. And I think with Trevor, the frustrating thing is it's not game to game inconsistent. In fact, he's incredibly consistently who he is game to game, but within that game, you might get a good drive out of him. He might not be able to hit the broadside of a barn or make a really bad mistake. So he's painfully, frustratingly so, consistently inconsistent has been really the definition on Trevor Lawrence on his career. But this year, I think it's time we really ding him for it, down to a 79 here. But then some of these other running backs, both the rookies, Byshell Tootin and Lakeem Allen, both have played very different roles here as rookies. Byshell Tootin's been a little bit of, the lightning to the lightning here. He's not terribly different from Travis Etienne stylistically, but it's been nice that they can go to Tootin, and it's not going to, be a tell to the defense what types of runs you're going to run. Tootin on outside runs has been really explosive. He looks the part to me. He's strong. He can shrug off tackles in the backfield, get tough yardage that wasn't blocked up, and he's got some explosiveness in there as well. The run blocking hasn't been quite as good for him, I think, as it has been for Etienne, just for one reason or another. So he hasn't quite had as many opportunities, but you have been able to see the juice. He's made some good plays in the receiving game as well. So it's a +4 for Tootin, up to a 73. And then Lakeem Allen also needs some love. It's a +1 for him. He's done great work as a pass blocker, picking up some tough yards on some third down runs. That was what he did at Syracuse, and it's commendable that he has carved his role into this backfield despite there being some other backs playing well ahead of him. And then we're going to have the Travis Hunter conversation, both with wide receiver and cornerback Travis Hunter here. It sucks that he got hurt. But I do think we saw mostly good from Travis Hunter's side of things. I think the overall experience was underwhelming in terms of usage and how the Jags were able to implement him really on both sides of the ball. But I think both at wide receiver and at corner, he did look like he can do his thing at both positions. I thought at wide receiver, especially the down in the field targets, contorting his body for the catch. Great to see that. On the field at the NFL level. We knew he could do that at Colorado. But some of the run after catch stuff too, showing off the shiftiness. So it's a +1 for Hunter, the wide receiver, which I do have rated a little bit higher than Travis Hunter, the corner. So I've got Travis Hunter, the wide receiver, at 79, and then now a +1 for Travis Hunter, the cornerback, up to a 76. Some really impressive pass breakups. Some really good reps on film against top wide receivers. I think he looked the part there, even if it was only 160 defensive snaps in 7 games. Him being the Shohei Ohtani of football, it just wasn't on full display this year. I still would like to see it. I know with the injury, and a lot of questions surrounding if that's possible after what we saw here in the first year. But at least in terms of can he play both positions in terms of is he good enough? I think the answer's been yes. So it's a +1 for Hunter on both sides of the ball. But then only one other wide receiver going up. It's going to be Parker Washington. And the interesting thing here is I had to reduce his catch rating here if we're talking about the roster, because he has had a painful amount of drops that have really held him back. It was really the main reason they went and traded for Jacoby Myers. Not just him, so many of these guys have had that issue. The Jags are on a historic pace for drops this year. But he has made some really tough catches. He's shown some juice as a punt returner as well. He can clearly make plays. It's just there have been some frustrating drops, but I did feel like it was appropriate to raise him. Like, he's still been a weapon for this team when he's not dropping the football. So he's up to a 75, but one player that is coming down here is Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, you knew this had to happen. This has to stack up with the biggest disappointments from a rookie year to a sophomore year. He was the talk of the town. People were wondering if he was the best wide receiver from that draft class. Talking about this, how Travis Hunter is going to be the number 2 to Brian Thomas. And, he was like fantasy drafts. He was like the 12th overall pick. Like, there was so much hype for him coming out of that first year to only get better. And it has been a nosedive for Brian Thomas. It's hard to watch. His amount of drops this year is a 19% drop rate. That's 7 drops on 59 targets. The only reason that doesn't lead the NFL is because Jerry Jeudy is also on an incredible run of having a bad season we talked about in the Browns, studs and duds. But 19% would have led the league last year. And a lot of these are on third downs because they have viewed him as the number 1. He gets a lot of these crunch time targets. And I've said this on this channel before. I'll say it a million times again. A third down drop should be registered as a turnover, the equivalent of an interception or a strip sack fumble. That is close to as costly of a play as you can make. When you're past the sticks, the ball's right in your hands and you don't catch the football. But it's not just that. It's bad ball skills on contested catch targets. Again, being someone that Trevor Lawrence has had to view as their number 1 wide receiver, go make a catch in a pinch. Brian Thomas, contested catch win rate, 33% this year. There's another play, too, that I debate even bringing up and holding against Brian Thomas, but I think 95% of NFL wide receivers go and make this play, and Brian Thomas chose not to, where Trevor Lawrence throws it over the middle of the field, and Thomas kind of stops on his route, makes a business decision to not get hit. The ball gets intercepted. You compound that with all the other stuff, and it's like, dude, he's playing, he's been a soft wide receiver. Whether you want to hold that play against him or not, the fact that he's not attacking the ball at the catch point, winning tough catches, and the fact that he's had all these drops, it's been painful to watch. So his rating, as a result, is going to drop 84 to an 81, which is definitely not low enough for how he's playing this year. You just pray that he can get back on track for all of the upside he showed last year. But then our next player here is going to be Brenton Strange, who I think if he didn't get hurt, probably would have been this team's midseason super stud. I said it in their deep dive that he really stood out to me on film before this year, and it's been a continuation of that this year. This was not someone I loved as a draft prospect. Honestly, coming out of Penn State, I thought they overdrafted him in the second round. I have every reason not to like Brenton Strange, to try to be right about my draft take. No, screw it. Like, he has just been such a better player than I ever thought he would be. He's been a tough blocker. That's been really good to see, but the routes he's running, these kind of quick outs, attack in the middle of the field, he's able to kind of be a mismatch problem and create some separation. He runs good corner routes. And his hands have been he's been the only reliable player as far as hands go on this entire team before they went and got Jacoby Myers. 3 for 3 on contested catch targets this year, just 1 drop on his 24 targets, 4.8% drop rate, not too shabby. I really think this guy can play, and it's a bummer he got hurt because this would have been a bigger bump in his rating. But I see him ascending at least towards that kind of Jake Ferguson, Dalton Schultz level tight end as just a really dependable, good possession tight end. So it's a +3 up to a 76 for now. Hopefully he can get back healthy and climb up to that mark for our postseason episode here on the Jags. But then Johnny Munt, the other tight end here, he's a blocker, man. He has been a big part of this run game. They put him on the wing. They run these tosses. He's got a great targeting system, and he loves to block, even if he's not the biggest tight end out there. So he's up to a 70 on the +1. And then just because we have so many players on the Jags here, I'm going to reveal all these offensive linemen at the same time. There's 5 offensive linemen creeping up for the Jags. None of these guys have really had like superstar seasons or anything, but Anton Harrison goes up to a 76. He continues to get incrementally better. He's been able to show off his athleticism as a run blocker in this run scheme much more. Then you got Ezra Cleveland. He's actually been pretty steady as a pass blocker, which I'm curious to see if he can keep that up because that has not really been the bill on Cleveland. But I do think this run scheme that we've talked a lot about to this point really fits his game as well, using that athleticism out on the move for tosses and screens and stuff. So he's having a good year. Again, +1 for him. Then you got Robert Hainsey. This has been a good signing, especially when you consider the fact that he was pretty cheap, was a backup in Tampa Bay. They're able to bring him over, and he's played like a starting caliber center this year. Not perfect. He's given up some as a pass blocker especially, but he deserves some love. He's a +1 up to a 72. The backup lineman, Cole Van Lanen, he is the ideal 6th offensive lineman, your 6th man of the year type on the offensive line. I love these types of guys. He's settled in that role. He's played every position other than center and has checked a lot of boxes along the way, both as a pass blocker and a run blocker. Athletic player coming out of Wisconsin. Kind of surprised the Packers let him go as a 6th round pick. He seems like the exact type that the Packers tend to develop, but he's been here in Jacksonville since 2022 and has really turned into a nice player to have, if not as a starter again, is that automatic plug and play backup that can play any position other than center and just kind of fill that hole nicely. And then their backup center, the rookie Jonah Monheim, he had to get a start against the Seahawks, and he graded out okay in a tough spot there against a good Seahawks D line. Just a +3, 63 to 64, so not too much to add on that, but a player to keep an eye on as a backup center there for the Jags. But let's talk some defense for Jacksonville. So we're going to start on a negative note on a role player. Just happened to work out this way because we start with the edge players. But Emmanuel Ogbah, going to get a -2. Seems to be getting older. Hasn't been the impact against the run as that heavy-handed edge rusher that they maybe were hoping he would be as a backup. Hasn't really done anything as a pass rusher, so he's down to a 71. But on the interior of the D-line, some of these veterans are having pretty good years. It's going to be a +1 for both Devon Hamilton and Eric Armstead. These guys have gotten back to doing what they're kind of known for, at least to a solid extent. Again, nothing crazy here, but Devon Hamilton has been a good impact for their run defense, much more so than he has been the last couple of years, really, since they paid him. They easily could have cut ties with him with the new regime coming in. They chose to kind of stand by him and hope he could kind of get healthy and back to what he used to do. And he's been doing much more of that this year, so that's really good. And then Eric Armstead as well. Same deal. They could have cut ties with him, but they decided to move him back to his natural position, rushing as a 4-eye, as an interior player. And he's already surpassed last year's pressure and sack total as well. Or, forgive me, he's too short of his pressure total from last year, but should well surpass that. But then you go to these linebackers. Devin Lloyd gets a +1 for me, 78 to a 79. And I already know Jags fans are going to be in the comments saying that's not enough. I understand. He has been a major splash play defender for this team, and the plays he's made have made huge impacts. He's had 4 interceptions this year. He had that pick 6 on Mahomes was sweet. He shows up, at the right time, it seems, against the run a lot of the time, but it's interesting because he also is missing 22% of his tackles this year. That's the 3rd highest in the NFL behind Maurice Luafau and Drake Thomas. And I think there have been some question marks on certain run plays as well. I think that the down-to-down run defense has been a little bit more streaky, inconsistent for him this season. His feel and coverage, he's always had that. And he's had some quarterbacks put the ball in his way, and he's taken advantage of it. He's going up here. But I do still think he has his imperfections as a linebacker. I just want to say that. And especially that missed tackle rate. Like, if he was getting guys on the ground more consistently, he would be up into the 80s for the rating here. But I'm not quite there yet, though he is having a good year. And then the backup linebacker, Ventrell Miller, he's definitely splashed as a run defender. I've always liked Ventrell Miller and the idea of Ventrell Miller, just this heat-seeking missile of a linebacker with, reckless abandon for his own safety. Not the perfect player, but he's made some plays. He deserves some love to go up to a 70. And then just some notes on some of these other linebackers as well, especially Dennis Gardick. Just kind of a fascinating behind-the-scenes discussion on him here a little bit. Like, he's been an edge rusher, but here in Jacksonville, they're playing him much more as a off-ball, weak-side linebacker. He's still getting after the quarterback and doing some of that pass-rushing stuff as a on-ball linebacker, but he's also just dropping back, playing off-ball linebacker a lot more, and as an edge rusher, he's been, he is 6 foot, 235 pounds. Like, he's basically the average build for a linebacker. But I think he's really been good in that role, honestly. He's just done a little bit of everything. He's shown up in coverage towards the sideline. He has had effective moments as a blitzer. He's been really good in run and chase as a tackler, kind of as a Frankie Louvu style player for this team. And normally he would have gone in the ratings boost on the list with everybody else. This is a very unique deal, though. Again, behind the scenes here, when I flipped him from an edge player to an off-ball linebacker, that rating dropped from a 73 down to a 67. So I didn't lower any of his pass rushing capabilities as an edge rusher there. What I did do is make him a 73 as a linebacker now. A lot of the tackling and play diagnostics and that kind of stuff have really been more than you would think for a guy that's been an edge guy his whole career. So he's been a fascinating impact that we had to have a conversation about, showing more versatility to his game, even if the overall rating on paper doesn't necessarily change there. But let's keep going here. So into the secondary, Jordan Lewis, especially in the first kind of third of the season, was a dynamic playmaker from the slot, looked like, and still is, a really good addition there, but especially earlier in the year, he was outstanding. +1 for him, up to a 78. And then he's missed some time, but that has allowed them to go to Jerrion Jones as the slot corner, who I imagine we'll continue to see Jerrion Jones even when Jordan Lewis returns. Probably sticking Jerrion Jones to outside corner, where I don't think he's as good. He's clearly at his best in that slot position where he can ball hawk and be that instinctive playmaker. But he's playing so well in the slot that I wouldn't be surprised if they just stick him back outside now that Travis Hunter is done for the year. We'll see how that plays out. But the last 3 weeks he's started in the slot. He's got 4 passes defended. He had a sweet pick against Houston. He hasn't missed a tackle in those 3 starts. That's especially impressive for Jerrion Jones, because in his rookie year and in college as well, missed tackles were a theme for him. But he improves from a 23% missed tackle percentage last year down to a 4% this year, and again, 0% in his 3 starts this year as a slot corner. So it's a +2 for Jerrion Jones. When they signed Jordan Lewis, it was like, there's nothing wrong with that signing. He's a good player, but you do have a really promising young slot corner here who was a 3rd-round pick, that it was just a little bit murky. Neither of these guys are going to be at their best being asked to play outside. I do wonder maybe if they should put Jordan Lewis outside and see how that goes. you have to go way back to 2017, his rookie year, for the last time Jordan Lewis played a healthy amount of outside corner, but he was pretty good in that rookie year. So we'll see what they want to do there with really two quality slot corners at hand. But Montaric Brown, the outside corner that has had to get an increase in snap count since Travis Hunter got hurt. He was kind of rotating with him beforehand. He's not a perfect player, far from it. He's not the best athlete. He's going to have some ugly losses and even some ugly weeks. But as a backup corner, like a CB4 physical guy on the outside, he's got 6 passes defended this year, a reception percentage allowed of 53%. You can do a lot worse than having him as a first man in off the bench. So it's a +1 for Montaric Brown up to a 72. And he had to start for them last year and was not the biggest of liabilities. And then I do have a note on Greg Newsome. He's going to stay put at the rating I had on him, which is a 76, I think. And that's honestly really a bummer for the Jags because he was destined for a big bump on the Browns. He looked like he was finally breaking out in Cleveland, had a really good start to the year, finally getting to play outside corner. And then he comes here to Jacksonville and he's been toast. He's allowing 15 receptions on 22 targets for 196 yards and 4 touchdowns, 0 passes defended on all of that. It's been really bad. So when he would have gone up before he became a Jag, effectively losing all of that since he got here. So you want to see some more from him. And what's even worse is Tyson Campbell's been the opposite. He was toast for the Jags. He goes to Cleveland and has been really solid as a CB2, honestly. Interesting move there. They bet on the athleticism of a Greg Newsome as opposed to the proven production of a Tyson Campbell. Both those guys, almost exactly the same age, out of the same draft class, were drafted within like 10 picks of each other. It'll be fun to continue to see how it goes. But right now, that trade is looking like a mistake for the Jags. But then one more defensive back is going up. It's Antonio Johnson. He's been starting the last month or so, and he's looked pretty good back there, man. Not really giving up too much in coverage. He's had 3 passes defended. He's tackling well. He was a player that I was really surprised fell as far in the draft as he did. Had way too many busted coverages and losses as a coverage defender last year to kind of be pigeonholed as a starter heading into this year. But he's clearly kind of earned some playing time back here and looks the part right now as he's just 24 years old heading into his 4th year next year. So he's up to a 71, getting some love there. And then last player here, Logan Cook, the punter, actually, I think second last in average hang time this year. One of the more higher rated punters heading into the year has not lived up to his rating. So he's down 2 to an 81. So there are your Jaguars. Let's talk about some Houston Texans here. So their midseason super stud was an easy choice. It is edge rusher Will Anderson Jr. really taking that leap from star pass rusher to elite superstar tier 1 guy. He is every bit, in my opinion, in the defensive player of the year discussion, although Myles Garrett with another 4-sack day kind of slamming the door shut on that one, just having a year of years. Kind of bad luck for Will Anderson for that to happen in the year that Will Anderson is breaking out in the way that he is. But awards aside, you will happily take this as a Texans fan, and he's playing at the level that at his age, he's going to have plenty of opportunities to get himself a defensive player of the year. And maybe it can still happen this year, but he's third in the NFL in pass rush win rate, third in pressures as well. He's still been a monster against the run. He's been able to do that since his rookie year. But to me, what I'm seeing on film, because I went through and really dug into Will Anderson tape before this, because I wanted to see just how legit this is before we crown a guy as a tier 1 edge rusher, which is incredible praise for anyone that's been around this channel. And it does have me inspired to do an edge tier maker video, by the way, so we can continue to celebrate this. But I think first and foremost with Will Anderson, I think he has continued to get his body into incredible shape. He was obviously an unbelievable athlete beforehand, but I'm talking about pound for pound natural play strength element to his game that, again, was always good. Now it's incredible. That kind of like Aaron Donald thing where, yeah, he's 280 pounds, but he can hit you with the force of a 330-pound nose tackle. That's what I'm talking about with Will Anderson, where he hasn't jeopardized the athletic ability, but now the power in his strikes, in his core, the surge of power that he's able to generate with that speed to power bull rush, it's taken another level. And I think that physical growth in his body to get into that physical prime is showing. And then you are starting to see a better ability to counter off of that bull rush. It's still his bread and butter. And just like kind of at Alabama, it's like he doesn't always need to win with a whole lot of everything else. And as he continues to add to that pass rush tool belt, this doesn't need to be the end of the development for Will Anderson, but he is at a point now where he knows how to deconstruct and get off of blocks when he does win with that bull rush. You're starting to see him set up some inside counters and getting better with his hands now that he's fully established this elite bull rush. And I think Will Anderson is often misunderstood too, because he's listed at 6'3", 245 pounds or whatever, that he's this kind of like speed rusher, but that's really not his game. He very much is, I tweeted this out, an electric sledgehammer. He's got an incredible first step and he does have bend, but it is that speed to power that has gotten him to this point. So very easy player to celebrate off the top here for the Texans. If I didn't say it before, it's a +5, up into the 90s now, 91 rating now on Anderson. And I really do think he can continue to go up again as those complementary pass rush moves continue to come along. He's developed every year. Why would it stop now? And that's a scary thought for opposing tackles. But let's shift our attention towards the offense for the Texans. Certainly hasn't been the best year for this Texans offense, but there's definitely some players to talk about. So Davis Mills, I'm going to give him some love for how he's playing. He's playing like a quality backup. They're 2-0 under his stead. I think he's done a relatively good job taking care of the football, playing point guard. He's made some throws down the field, so a little bit of love, nothing crazy, but up to a 68. And then Woody Marks showing off some juice, showing off the receiving chops at the NFL level. There's been some moments as a runner when they get him on crack toss and get him out on the outside. You can see the some of the shiftiness and the speed and the electric ability. It certainly hasn't been consistent for him, and I still think you see a lot of question marks with his vision. If they do want to use him as between the tackles runner, I don't think he's someone to look at as like, oh, he's going to break out as the future starting running back of the Texans. Like if you're looking at him in dynasty leagues and stuff like that, like I'd be a little bit more careful there. But I do think as a scat back role, he's shown he can do a lot of that stuff. It's just right now they've almost been forced to give him double-digit carries every week. You're still talking about 3.5 yards a carry. I think the Texans would benefit from getting Joe Mixon back, or looking for a real full-time back in the future. But Marks does deserve some praise as a impactful player for this offense. But then we got both these rookie wide receivers, Jalen Noel and Jalen Higgins. It's a +3 for Noel and a +1 for Higgins, but now both sitting at a 74 rating for me. These guys have really settled in, it feels like, in the last month. We'll start with Jalen Noel. When he runs quick routes and dots guys up from the slot, I really do just see a lot of shades of Ladd McConkey. He's not quite as good as Ladd across the board, but you see the same idea of that young guy that's just a really snappy route runner. But the thing with Noel that he always did at Iowa State that the Texans have also been able to tap into is he can get down the field and make some really tough catches. I saw so much kind of Tyler Lockett, a little bit of like Jaden Reed minus the play strength through like run after catch. You've seen that skill set from him, and I think they should really use him more and more and more as an easy button for this offense, especially in the quick game. But he's absolutely looked the part. And then his college teammate and now Texans teammate Jaden Higgins, his usage has been a little bit lighter, and honestly, it's not a huge surprise. I may have even said in the Texans deep dive that I wouldn't be surprised if Jalen Noel has a better rookie season than Jaden Higgins. Higgins' skill set is a little bit more redundant with Nico Collins. It's harder to want to throw the ball to Jaden Higgins on a go ball or a dig or the kind of perimeter passing game when you can throw it to Nico Collins instead. But I do think Jaden Higgins has also passed the test when they have gone his way. He's come down with 5 out of his 9 contested catch targets. He has no drops on the year. Made a huge catch in that comeback effort against the Jags as well. So it's a +1 for Higgins. Both these Iowa State wide receivers are a little slow to start, but they're starting to get that impact that you would have hoped for given what myself and I think most people said about those being great values in the draft when they got those 2 Iowa State teammates. And then another Iowa State wide receiver, Xavier Hutchinson, he has stepped up in some moments this year. He's always stood out as just a reliable, kind of classic backup wide receiver to me, where you can kind of line up everywhere, trust him. He's going to be in the right place at the right time, and he's probably going to catch the ball. Not some crazy athlete or anything like that, but he's a steady player, so he's up to a 72 as well. But going down is going to be Christian Kirk, -2 down to a 76. He's continued to deal with some injuries this year, and that's just kind of what you can expect from Kirk at this point, but he hasn't looked good when he's been out there either. He's got a career low in reception percentage, coming down with just 53% of his targets. And when you're a slot wide receiver, that can't really be the case. And his career percentage on that is 67%. When he was doing really well in Jacksonville, it was up towards like 70%. So he hasn't been able to create the separation. He's 1 for 6 on contested catch targets this year. He's got a drop in there. Just feels like the injuries have caught up with him. And honestly, if I'm a Texans fan, I'm saying let's make Christian Kirk our wide receiver 5. Let's just, honestly, I would even think about just releasing him and just fully opening the door for these kids that are just playing better ball than Christian Kirk, let alone the fact that you're able to get them those reps. Even if this team is, hoping to make a playoff push and all that, realistically, you could make 2026 your window before you have to pay CJ Stroud, and getting to a place where you feel really good about these rookie wide receivers might be, a better long-term vision there. And short-term, for that matter. But then on the offensive line, I'm going to reveal 5 players here. And it sounds weird to raise 5 players for the Texans O-line and not lower anybody. Just an explanation on that. Number 1, the reason nobody's going down is that these guys were already rated about as poorly as they're playing at large. So there's not a huge need to pile on some of those guys. But also, all of these plays we're about to talk about have kind of had individual one-off performances. There's been a couple games against worse defensive lines where things have started to come together for this offensive line as well. They're far from through the woods right now, but I do think they've located some players that can play, and they're starting to figure things out. So as we sort through this, the first guy we're going to talk about is Arianti Ursary. He's one of these guys that when he loses, it is so ugly, where he gets caught leading, he stops his feet, and Texans fans are going to be like, +1 for Ursary. I've seen this guy look like a fool out there. Well, he's just up to a 69, so he still has a long way to go, but he's had some better games in there, and just because you have a really ugly loss doesn't mean your overall efficiency has been horrible. It was always the same thing with Charles Leno on the Bears. He was always better than Bears fans thought he was, but he had some clunky losses that it's you think he's worse than he is. But I think they feel okay with him at left tackle there. And then Titus Howard, he's been a bit of a saving grace for them. He's played mostly right tackle this year, and it's been good to see him get back out there. I still think he's best as a tackle, but at least in the case of this year, it might be better for him to play guards so that some of these other guys can play tackle, because their interior line is even worse than their tackle play, especially when Trent Brown has been able to go, as he has in recent weeks. But Titus Howard's been honestly really steady. He can't run block for shit, and that plays into the fact that this run blocking for the Texans is just horrible across the board. Pretty much everybody we're talking about here is largely pass protection. But Titus Howard, whether it's at right tackle or right guard, is honestly having one of the better years of his career in terms of pressure rate allowed and that kind of stuff. He's been very consistent. And then the center, Jake Andrews, I don't think he's the answer. He's been really inconsistent this year, but getting that starting playing time and having a couple of games that have been okay, we're going to give him a +1 up to a 66. It's really all I have to add on Jake Andrews. Jarrett Patterson, I like Jarrett Patterson. I'm surprised he wasn't named one of their starters out the gate. The last 2 weeks he has been starting at left guard, and he's actually held up really well in pass pro. So he's getting a +1 for those two games right there, I would keep him there at left guard, especially because he is he's played some center. Theoretically, he can help you with the stunts and twists in the games, being, at least in theory, kind of a more high awareness, high IQ type of lineman, being that second center on the offensive line to communicate with Jake Andrews there. And then at right guard, Ed Ingram, he's started at right guard really in the games that Titus Howard has been playing tackle. And he's been up and down, as you kind of would expect from Ed Ingram, for anybody that followed him on the Vikings. But they brought him over here. He was a second-round pick in 2022. He's had some monster games, a couple games as a lockdown pass blocker against Denver and Baltimore. And then he also had a couple games against Tampa Bay and Tennessee where he was a monster as a run blocker. You haven't been able to see him kind of put the whole picture together, but in some, he's having a decent season when he's been out there. Now, he's kind of taking a seat right now. I don't think they fully trust him, and it's not like we're rating him out as this bona fide starter or anything, up to a 68, but if they can continue to develop him, the traits are there. If he can just become a more consistent player, to maybe be an answer as more of a long-term solution. We'll see if he can get there. But that's going to do it for the offense and the Texans. Let's talk about some more members of the defense after we talked about Anderson earlier. So his running mate, Danielle Hunter, just such a beast, dude. He doesn't quite have the volume of pressures that Will Anderson has. It's 55 pressures for Anderson, 47 for Danielle Hunter. But he does have them in a couple of metrics. He's actually... I mentioned Will Anderson was third in pass rush win rate. Number 2 is Danielle Hunter. Myles Garrett's number 1. And it does feel like Danielle Hunter is actually kind of only getting better. And for what it's worth, PFF agrees as far as how he's playing this year. He has the highest pass rush grade on his career at 89.8. This duo has been, unfortunately, a little bit sheltered by the fact that this offense has been so bad, but I mean, this is a historic edge rush duo season we're seeing from these guys. Danielle Hunter up into the 90s now as well. I mean, you're seeing him now pretty consistently hit that spin move. I feel like earlier in his career, I have to go back and confirm it, but I feel like he wasn't breaking out game-changing spin moves against tackles earlier in his career. We know he's got the power and the speed to corner, and so much to his repertoire, but what an addition Danielle Hunter has been. I know Jonathan Grenard for the Vikings has been pretty damn good as well as these guys flip teams. But if you're a Vikings fan, it's got to be pretty tough to watch this, seeing him stay healthy and really having career years here in Houston. But they're getting some contributions from these interior guys too, which on paper heading into the year, this was going to be a question, kind of how this group was going to shake out. And talk about teams kicking themselves for letting a guy go. Sheldon Rankins, the Bengals just abandoned him after an injury-plagued season. They had given him a 3-year, $30 million contract and just immediately released him after an injury-ridden season. Well, the Texans bounce right back, pick him up on the cheap after that down year, and he's just right back to playing at the level that got him paid in the first place. He's been an impactful pass rusher. He's able to get off blocks against the run. It's a +2 for Sheldon Rankins with the impact he's made here. And then Tommy Togiai, he's a fun player, man. Athletic guy coming out of Ohio State, was drafted in the 4th round by the Browns. The Texans snagged him, kind of becoming a theme here of teams letting these D linemen go and playing better here on the Texans. But dude, Togiai's bull rush is legit, man. I saw that 77 PFF pass rushing grade on Togiai, and I was like, I gotta go watch some of these pressures from this dude, because that's a really good mark. And his get off, the pop in his hands, it's real. And this is only building off of some flashes he's shown going back to last year. There's a reason in the Texans deep dive I put the little eyes emoji on him on the depth chart, because I saw some of those little flashes on the tape last year, but now it's he's getting steady playing time, and with the pressure they're getting from Anderson and Hunter and Rankins, to just have a guy that can fly off the ball and compress the pocket from the inside, it really does matter, because especially a lot of the time Hunter and Anderson are rushing upfield, forcing the QB to step up. But if someone like Togiai isn't giving you a place to step up, that's where you turn into just nightmare mode against this pass rush. So it's a +2 for him. He's a one-dimensional player with that bull rush, but it's a valuable asset there. And then into the second level, Azeez Al-Shaair is playing really well here. It's a +2 for him, up to an 80 now. He's really settled in here. You know, he had a rough start to his Texans career. Last year, a lot of just really rough moments in coverage, especially. You haven't felt those gaffes necessarily this year. Not that he's been like an incredible coverage defender, but he's seemingly cleaned up some of those issues that teams were taking advantage of last year. And he does have 3 pass breakups on the year this year. But yeah, he's really locked in as an impact run defender for this team. He's got the play strength to thump. He's got the kind of batshit crazy mentality that DeMeco Ryans demands out of these linebackers to just play through the chaos of these slants up front. They kind of are in that solace system where they just muddy things up and want you to just be able to throw your head in a hurricane and find the ball carrier, and he's able to do that. He's got speed to the sideline too, so he gets some love. And then, speaking of speed, EJ Speed has really carved out a starting role here as LB2, and the Texans have been looking for that LB2. It's been a lot of Toa, and you know they haven't gotten what they wanted from Christian Harris. There's been some Jake Hansen in there, but the last 2 weeks, AJ Speed has outsnapped Toa, who's been like okay, but also can't cover or tackle anyone, which is kind of a problem if you're a linebacker. But EJ Speed's been flying around, man. He's always brought a lot of energy at the linebacker position. He's exactly what we just described, what DeMeco Ryans loves in these linebackers. And he's really stood out, especially with Al-Shaair kind of settling in as the Mike, the guy that's, you know, getting everybody lined up in the right place, playing a little bit more disciplined. EJ Speed really is allowed to just fly around and make plays, and he's been able to do that here. So it's a +2 for him, up to a 73. And then into the secondary, gonna show some love for Derek Stingley. He's got 11 pass breakups on the year. That is second behind just DJ Turner. He has allowed a little bit more in coverage than he did last year, but he was incredible at it last year. And it's going to happen at corner from time to time. But I think the ability for him to play the ball and have these game-changing interceptions, it's really special. I mean, he kind of is what you hope Travis Hunter can be as a cornerback, where maybe his coverage isn't always perfectly sticky, but it's really good. And then he's got like generational ball skills at the cornerback position. I think we've continued to see that from Stingley. One note on him, he's got to clean up some of these missed tackles. He's at a 25% missed tackle rate right now. He's managed to not let that be an issue in his NFL career. He's been a pretty stable tackler, but that was a big question for him coming out of college. So want to see him get that cleaned up. In the last few weeks, he has, to be fair, been much better there. But it is still ultimately a +1 for Derek Stingley that continues to look like one of the better corners in football. He climbs up to a 91. And then Jalen Petrie, their nickelback, +2. He's up to an 80. He's having an outstanding season. This role has just been so right for him. Getting back to what he did at Baylor, really just being a slot corner for this team, but someone that can actually fill the run from that nickel position. He allows the Texans to stay in that base 4-2 and be so moldable from that formation. But he's had some really good pass breakups on the year, jumping balls in the flat. There's a lot of really good nickel players right now. But Jalen Petrie probably needs to be talked about more in that conversation for who the 5 or 6 best nickel corners in the league are. So there are your Houston Texans. Let's now go to the Tennessee Titans. It's not all going to be positive on this Titans team, but let's start on a positive note with their super stud, Jeffrey Simmons. It's been years of me wanting Jeffrey Simmons to really take that leap, to be more of a consistent, dominant player. There's always been the individual games from Jeffrey Simmons where you point at that guy and you say, that's what an elite defensive tackle looks like. But the next week or the next month, he could go quiet or disappear. And it's been hard to kind of answer why that is. It's been really hard to answer that, honestly. But for whatever reason this year, in a lost season on a horrible team, Jeffrey Simmons' dominance, I would even go a step further and maybe say like the motor. I don't know. Again, it's been hard to exactly point out why it is Jeffrey Simmons hasn't been this version of Jeffrey Simmons in the past. But you watch the Titans and it's just obvious. Like, he is consistently taking over games from the first quarter through the fourth quarter in a way that he hasn't always done. So it's a +3 for him in the ratings, up to an 89. Really is playing at the level of the best defensive tackle in the NFL this year. Chris Jones and Dexter Lawrence especially have been pretty quiet this year relative to their expectations, and Jeffrey Simmons is totally filling in their stead. And good on Tennessee for, probably being stubborn about some trade requests on him, because given the fact that he's been, a great but not elite player really for the course of his career, I would say at this point, the price point probably wasn't like 2 first-round picks for Jeffrey Simmons based on the trade requests they were getting, but he's playing now at the level at 28 years old that should demand like the Quinnen Williams trade or the Sauce Gardner trade, like that type of deal, the 2 first-round pick price point. I'm just speculating there, but that really is the level he's emerged at, and again, just 28 years old. Maybe he does keep this up, and we're talking about, Jeffrey Simmons is the best defensive tackle in football. And he's doing it, by the way, with nobody around him. But let's talk about this Titans offense, if we have to. I'm going to lower Cam Ward by 1. I think he's keeping his head above water. I don't think we need to overreact to this, and hopefully, this is the first and only time Cam Ward really goes down. I don't think this is a proper infrastructure for a young quarterback to come in. He's had like good moments, a nice game-winning drive game-tying drive just this last week against that vaunted Texans defense. The end of the Cardinals game. There's been some really big signature throws in there. Overall, I think he generally looks the part, but he has been wildly inconsistent and a part of the problem here. But I think he's going to be okay. I hope he's going to be okay. I don't think it's been all bad, but I think we do need to go -1 from a 73 down to a 72. But then Tony Pollard, the running back, he just hasn't looked good. Like, we could break down the yards per attempt and all of that, and that's all down. But anyone that's had the courage to turn on the Titans this year, you can tell that it kind of seems like a shell of himself this year. I don't know if he's just not healthy or what's going on with him. It's a -3 for him, down from an 82 to a 79. And I don't know, that might not be far enough. It's been really weird. Like, he's just not a factor for this Titans team right now. After the first half of last year, he was awesome. And he's just not that guy right now. So I don't know. Again, -3, 82 to a 79. But we do have some rookies to talk about here that are at least showing they can play. Alec Iomanner, 4th-round pick. He's been more quiet as of late than he was in the first maybe 5 or 6 games of the season, but he's made some tough catches. He's shown that he definitely shouldn't have gone as late as the 4th round. I think the best projection for Iomanner is as a quality number 2 type of wide receiver, a possession guy, physical dude that can run some good routes. Probably not explosive enough to count on him to be your number 1 for the long haul, but he's shown some nice chemistry plays with Cam Ward, and I think there's something there to keep working at with him as he climbs to a 73. And then Shamari DK, I like how he has played and how he kind of plugs in as another complement to Iomanner. As that vertical threat, he's made some big plays down the field. They have that, I think it was the opening drive against the Patriots. He runs that snappy, deep over route where he fakes to the corner, breaks off towards the middle of the field and all the way back to the opposite side of the field, gets a big, deep completion on a beautiful ball from Cam Ward, one of those big flash plays for Ward. But DK can get open down the field. He does not have a drop this year. That was something I really liked about him at Florida was, there's a limited route tree there. He's not necessarily the most well-rounded wide receiver, but he's fast, he can get open deep, and he catches the football. There's a lot to build around there with him. So I think with that skill set plus Iomanner, it is a bummer that Ridley's basically missed this whole season at this point, because Ridley does have more of that number 1 wide receiver skill set, but if they can either get Ridley healthy or get something like a Calvin Ridley, maybe it is in this draft, maybe it's that Arizona State wide receiver. We're getting pretty far ahead of ourselves with the offseason talk there. But if you could drop a real number 1 into this group of wide receivers, I like how Iomanner and DK slot in as complementary pieces. And then Gunnar Helm looks like a really solid tight end. Another one of these guys that fell a little bit later than he should have because he didn't run that fast. I get wanting that mismatch problem, but stop overrating 40 time for tight ends. That's like 7th on the list of traits that I want from a tight end. Gunnar Helm has great hands. He blocks. He's smart. He's 6 for 8 on contested catch targets. He's physical at the catch point. He kind of like Brenton Strange that we talked about earlier, feels very much like he has a good chance at being kind of a Dalton Schultz, Jake Ferguson-esque possession, like starting possession tight end that they found in the 4th round. So you've had some draft wins with some of the kind of complementary pass catchers there. Good to see that at least. But then with the offensive line, J.C. Latham gets a +1. He's like the only guy on this offensive line that's really meant it as a run blocker this year. He has stood out to me in that regard. He's been week to week as a pass blocker as he's moved over to right tackle. I still have my question marks about his overall upside, but he's been an okay player here after they spent that top 10 pick on him. Hopefully, though, he can have the Peter Skoronski career trajectory where he was just okay for the first couple of years. But now Peter Skoronski getting another +1 here. He up to an 81, by the way. He keeps creeping up towards that kind of top 10 guard positioning. And he's still like not the most consistent run blocker. And I do think some of the shorter arms, not the most sensational athlete, not the strongest overall player, like his margin for error in terms of technique and being in the right place and having that proper targeting system, it is just pretty narrow, but he's had a much better season as a run blocker, in my opinion. And the pass blocking efficiency just keeps going up and up and up. Here in year 3, he's been one of the more sound pass protecting guards in the league. It really was just that week 4 game against that Houston pass rush where he slipped up a little bit. But other than that, he's been just about elite as a pass blocker. So they are certainly happy that they have Skoronski, and I'd have to lay it all out, but it feels relatively safe to say he's a top 10 guard in football at this point. But some of these other interior players next to these guys going up are not playing well. Kevin Zeitler does just kind of look old. He's been losing in pass pro. He's down to the lowest pass blocking efficiency, which is pressures per snap allowed. He's down to the 3rd lowest mark on his career and the worst in 5 years. The 2 other years lower than this year were the 2020 year with the Giants after they released him the next year, and then 2013, which was the 2nd year of his long career. He's going to be 36 at the end of the year, so don't need to pile on him, but just hasn't quite been as good as he was in Detroit last year. And then Lloyd Cushenberry, -3 for him, down to a 75. And it's not that he's like unplayable or anything like that, but they made him one of the higher paid centers in the NFL in free agency, and he's just been okay. Very middle of the road, kind of take him or leave him center. I don't know if that's lazy analysis, but it's now been 2 years of him in Tennessee where he's felt like that. So we're gonna drop his rating to account for that much more there. Wouldn't be surprised if this is his final year here in Tennessee, because I would think that there's probably not a lot of guarantees left on that deal. But that is going to do it for the offense on Tennessee. Let's talk about the defense. So we're going to start with Oluwafemi Oladejo, the 2nd-round rookie here. He looks big, he looks strong, and has been playing the run really hard. He still has a long way to go, especially as a pass rusher. But he's shown some flashes, and then he got hurt, which was a bummer. But he was a really tradesy day 2 draft pick. Excited to hopefully see him get back out there on the field and keep developing. I liked him. They took him a tick earlier than I would have liked to, but not terribly early. But then Jalen Harrell has had to step in because they have nobody else to play with Oladejo getting hurt. They traded away Draymond Jones. I'm not going to say it's been good for Harrell, but he's getting some playing time. He's had some splash plays, so he gets a +3 up to a 66 after being a 63. But that's kind of where the Titans are at, is just trying to find maybe role players in some of these guys. One of the better players on this defense this year has, unfortunately, if you're a Titans fan, been Jihad Ward. Ward's on his 7th team in 10 years. He's been this mercenary sledgehammer available for hire every year. But he's got 24 pressures on 223 pass rush snaps this year. That's pretty good. He's been a good heavy-handed edge rusher. And again, since Olu got hurt and they traded away Draymond Jones, Jihad Ward's had to be a full-time starter for them, and he's been pretty solid. So he gets a +2 up to a 70. He's having a nice year at age 31. But then you go to the interior, and these interior D linemen next to Jeffrey Simmons are also playing well. Tavondre Sweat continues to look the part. He missed a large part of the start of the season, but it's been good to see him get back out there and continue to look like such a good use of a second-round pick for this team. It's just hard to find good nose tackles that are ready out the gate like Sweat has been. He's been one of the better run-defending defensive tackles in the league since he entered it. Still just kind of the occasional splash as a pass rusher, but to have someone help you get to third downs and play that role, he's got a ton of value. So it's a +1 for him. I wish it could be more, but he's only played a handful of games this year. And then Sebastian Joseph Day as well, who was a big winner in this series last year, kind of having a bounce back season after he had really faded away. He had a good start to his career with the Rams, but then was kind of passed around as this kind of cheap veteran Band-Aid plug-in and really hadn't played his best ball, but he's settled back in. And for him to be their third defensive tackle, for whatever you want to say about the Titans, they do have one of the better interior D-lines in the league, especially Jeffrey Simmons and everything we said about him reaching this level. You can make a strong case, honestly, that the Titans have the best interior D-line in the league that they can hopefully continue to build around. And I think they knew that when they said no to Jeffrey Simmons trades. It's like, hey, at least we got one thing that we can hang our hat on. And it's a pretty good thing to hang your hat on, is a great interior D-line. But as we continue to go to the next level of the defense with these linebackers, Cody Barton, I'm going to lower him 76 to a 75. And some Titans fans might be saying, well, why? He's made some good plays for us. He's been a pretty nice signing. And it's interesting. As a coverage defender, Cody Barton has actually been really good. He's got 6 passes defended, 3 picks this year. And when I was editing Cody Barton here, I did raise his coverage abilities. However, when he was in Denver last year, he was an awesome run defender inside that system. And you look at this Titans team, and you see them 25th against the run this year. And you look at that interior D-line, and you're like, how is that possible? Well, Simmons and Sweat have missed some time, but generally speaking, Cody Barton has gone back to the 2023 version when he was in Washington, where he can't get to the ball against the run. Slow diagnostics, poor angles, getting caught up on blocks, you name it. His missed tackle percentage has also doubled from what it was last year, where he was a really consistent tackler on the Broncos. So the Broncos knew something here that they were hiding, I think, because they've been sandwiched by 2 really bad years of run defense for Cody Barton, and I did need to ding him for that, even if he's made some really impactful plays in coverage for this team that he also deserves credit for. But next to him, it's kind of been the opposite story with Cedric Gray. He's been awesome this year, and he was definitely a candidate for a super stud as well, because I think he's... I'm maybe ready to say this. I'm curious what Titans fans think from what you've seen this year, but I think he might be their LB1 of the future. I thought he was such a steal in the 4th round when they got him in an era where it's so hard to find kind of do-it-all linebackers in the draft that actually did pro linebacker things in college. I thought Cedric Gray checked a lot of boxes, and even then, he struggled to get out there as a rookie, had some rough games as a rookie, but this year, I mean, he's got 35 defensive stops this year. He's missed just 5 tackles. That's 5%. That's a 5% missed tackle rate. That's outstanding. He's flying to the ball. He's got a couple pass breakups as well. I always liked his overall feel in coverage. There's still room for him to learn in that category. But I talked about Cody Barton's inability to get to the football. It shows up in the stats. I mean, Cedric Gray has 35 defensive stops. Cody Barton has 16. His instincts have just blown away the veteran Cody Barton here. So I really like Cedric Gray. He's been a big bright spot for this Titans team. But let's go to the secondary. Tanking L'Jarius Sneed here, -7, 84 to a 77. This has been one of the worst moves in the NFL. Trading a high 3rd round pick for a bad, injured, expensive cornerback that is now getting in trouble off the field, by the way. Sounds like a bad apple in his life. Was out shooting up like a car retailer, and L'Jarius Sneed failed to report a felony. Who knows, man? But what I do know is on the field, L'Jarius Sneed has not been good. He wasn't good last year, and he's been picked on this year when he's been out there. which has only been 7 games. The 77 rating is strictly attached to the fact that this guy's probably going to be the CB1 on the Chiefs again next year and just be good again and annoy us all with that, because he was a clear top 10 corner just a couple years ago on Kansas City. But Tennessee, unfortunately, has paid for that and gotten none of it. So a big drop for Snead. Darrell Baker has kind of stepped in that stead. Pretty similar to what we said about like Monteric Brown, where he's not a perfect corner. He's going to have some games that are better than others, but as like a fourth corner that's now racked up a lot of playing time, you could do worse as CB depth when it feels like probably the most injury-prone position in the league right now. So he gets a +1 up to a 71. Then Marcus Harris, he's definitely someone to keep an eye on here. It's just been about a game and a half worth of snaps for him, 92 snaps over the last 3 weeks. But he was a 6th-round pick out of California. Admittedly, I had no idea that this guy was kind of on the draft radar. You see all those kind of like information pools of prospects, and I had already watched the Cal secondary twice, once for Noel Williams and again for Craig Woodson. So I was a little frustrated myself when he got drafted. I was like, man, Cal had another one of these guys, but those other 2 DBs from Cal have played well this year, and Marcus Harris as well. Didn't they have Fernando Mendoza as well? Like, what was going on with that Cal team, and why did we hear nothing about them? But anyway, Marcus Harris has made some plays in the slot for this Titans team. They traded away Roger McCreary, and I got to think them wanting to maybe get Marcus Harris out there had to do something with that, considering they probably weren't going to extend Roger McCreary there. But he's been tackling hard from the slot. Had a nice pass breakup this last week against the Texans, so someone to keep an eye on as someone that did run well in his testing, and 6th-round slot corners end up carving out starting roles all the time. So we'll keep an eye on him. And then the last player here, Amani Hooker, just not having a good year back there. Settled back down a little bit as of late. It's a volatile position, but the first half of the first 5 weeks of the season, he was really getting picked on in coverage. So it's a little ding there. Some missed tackles earlier in the year too. So it's just down to a 79. He's going to be okay, but not quite playing up to his standards, and we needed to account for that a little bit here. But that is going to do it for AFC South Studs and Duds. Thank you guys so much for watching. We have one more division here to go, and it just might be dropping here tonight if you're watching this on the day of this video's release here on Wednesday. So looking forward to that. Please do hit the like button on the way out. Let me know what you think of the ratings changes here for this division, if you think I missed anybody or was too high or too low on any of these players. But I will see you guys soon. Peace out.